Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Christa Gurka, and we have another guest episode today. I'm very, very excited because this is marketing month. All of our calls this month are all about marketing. So we've had Connie, who talked all about how your website is about marketing. We today have Lauren Peachie, who is a marketing strategist for small business owners, and she is a delight and a wealth of information. So I'm so glad to have you here, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I
I'm
love
so
talking about
excited.
marketing.
I just love talking, period. So I did say I love her background. So if you're not watching this on my YouTube channel, you should definitely go to YouTube and check it out because she's got the cutest little peachy background and her name is Lauren Peachie. So why don't you give our audience a little history on you and how you got to where you are today and what you're doing. And then we're going to dive into marketing questions because I think, and I've said this to you before, where I was like, I don't know the difference in what you do from what like this person does. I just, and it's not that I'm ignorant. I just think marketing is so many things that it's very hard, I think, for people that are not in the marketing sector to understand what the difference is. So first, let's have you tell us how you got to be where you are today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me yap about my favorite thing, marketing and helping women in business thrive. I started my marketing career working for ad agencies, so being a part of a whole team managing millions of dollars of ad spend and organic marketing. And it was a great place to learn, and I enjoyed the hustle and bustle. But at that time, I wanted to be a little bit more creative than being the little low man on the totem pole allowed. So I had been working on doing more and more brand photography on the side and eventually went full time doing that. So headshots and commercial photography for businesses to use on their social media and on their website. And so for a decade, I've been working with small businesses to figure out what visually they needed to be able to market their brand and their business. And I always loved being able to focus in on where the photos were going to live afterwards so that the shoot could be as strategic as possible. So that's how my business has evolved to where it is, whereas I help put the marketing strategy in place because people would be excited to take pictures, but they wouldn't necessarily have a plan for what they were going to do with them afterwards. And I loved the strategy piece of where are you going to be showing up? What are the platforms? What is the literal format? Like, do you need big banners? Do you need tall and skinny? And like, who are we trying to talk to? What are we trying to attract? So, over the last 15 years, my business and offerings have kind of evolved that I just now focus on the strategy piece, put down my camera, but still helping people figure out visually and messaging wise how they can talk on behalf of their business to find ideal clients.
That's awesome. I'm glad you brought up the point about the photography, and we won't get into like a whole side note because that could be a whole other podcast episode. But I have become like a photo shoot. I don't want to use the word Nazi because that's not the right thing. Like dictator, because I do agree that it once you know where they're going to be. So, take a bunch of pictures with white background, although now you can Photoshop almost anything, but still it makes it easier if it's just white. You can put graphics on it. Do they need to be vertical, horizontal? Do they need to have a lot of background? Do they need to be close-ups? Like, let's take, that's why I like should have a shot list when you go to a photographer and be like, I want this picture, this picture, this picture, this picture. I want to take in several different outfits, put your hair in different places in different ways. So we'll leave that question for another podcast episode. But what would you, okay, so since you said you are involved mostly with strategy now, can you explain what that entails?
where we want to show up, what we want to be saying, who we're trying to attract. So that's how we
Okay.
put together what is strategic for your business. So having an understanding of your services and your offerings, who they're for, and then what do we need to communicate so that those people find you and hire you.
Okay. So can you walk me through? I'm a new business owner. Well, let's take me. I'm Pilates in the Grove, and that's not really fair because you worked with my brand
I
for
was
a
like,
little bit.
I cheat a little bit for you, but yes, okay.
Okay, so I'm referred to Lauren Peachie, and I love her vibe, and I'm like, okay, I wanted you to help me with Pilates in the Grove. Like, can you walk me through what my first session with you looks like?
Figuring out what you do. We have to have a
Okay.
basic understanding of what are your services. Obviously, for Pilates in the Grove, we know that we have Pilates, and then we also have physical therapy, and then you also have your rejuvenation services. So, talking about across your offerings, what are we needing to grow? Like, what are we trying to attract people? Because if your physical therapy practice is running pretty well and you don't have space for new people, we probably don't want to dedicate a ton of marketing energy to bringing in leads for physical therapy. But if we've got lots of open spaces and Pilates classes, that's probably a really good place for us to focus that, like, okay, business wise, our goal is to get our Pilates classes full. We want to have a waiting list for all of our classes so that we can add more classes, more teachers, and be growing in that way. So the first part is looking at your business that way of what's working already, what needs help, and what needs help is where we're going to focus our marketing energy. And then the next step is what does that look like? What does marketing mean for you?
Hmm.
I know that we were talking about digital marketing specifically. So we'd want to look at your website first. Is your website friendly when people arrive on it for them to be able to convert to students, convert to clients, convert to patients? So before we work on anything that's going to be bringing new people in, we have to first make sure that your website is set up to serve them really well. So that's one of the first places we start is looking through your website and being like, okay, does what you just told me you do match up with what I find when I get on your website? So if I find you on Google or on Instagram talking about Pilates, excellent. I arrive on your website, but then your whole above the fold and scroll is all about physical therapy. I'm now confused
Hmm.
because I was learning about Pilates and now I arrive on a site that is literally Miami physical therapy and Pilates, but it's like teeny tiny and is not a part of any of it. So, um, making sure that you have a consistent experience for people discovering you, that they know they're in the right place looking for what you have.
Oh, such a good answer. So I'm going to deduce that you believe we should have a website.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I would agree also. That was part of our
You know
podcast a
what? I
couple weeks
shouldn't
ago.
have assumed. You're right. I should not assume that that is a known entity. Yes. I want to
I
make
think
sure
some
everyone starts.
people, yeah, I just think some people are like, oh, your website's not important. I personally don't agree with that. However, I don't believe that we have to have a 25-page website, but we should have, and well, from what I'm hearing, is you should have even if it's a landing page that has some sort of way that they understand what it is you do that matches what they thought they were coming for,
Yes.
right? And then a way to contact you at the very least.
Yes.
Yes.
The you when everything we're going to talk about today, every marketing platform, every place that you could show up, you don't have to do everything, but you do have to do some things. And so if you don't want to do A, B, and C, you're going to have to choose to do D, J, and
Mhm.
K.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you just don't have any way for new people to find you. To me, website is a non-negotiable, but I agree it doesn't have to be extensive. It just has to align with expectations. So from what's pulling them in, so right, like Google social, anything like that, to your website that all of that matches. And then the next step for like student and client satisfaction is that the in-person experience matches both of those things too.
Oh, yes. I was trying to explain this to somebody the other day, and I was saying, you know what it's like? Have you ever met someone, maybe professionally or tangentially, and you're like, they seem super put together, very polished, I'm going to be stereotypical, but nails done, jewelry on point, makeup on. You know them for a while, they always seem very straight laced, and then you go to their house and it looks like Attack of the Hoarders. Like those two things do not align with each other. And it's just like, that's bizarre because that's nothing like I would have expected. So your whatever messaging you're putting out on social or in the community or wherever you are marketing should align with what they see on your website and should also align with what they experience when they come into your location, is what you're saying.
Yes.
The
The
whole line, the whole journey.
Because of exactly what you said, the the biggest opportunity to lose people is when they come in with expectations and you don't meet them. And it
Mhm.
can happen in like I used to talk about it in terms of wardrobe for sessions that people would get excited like I'm going to wear a power suit and I'm going to be like boss bitch for my photos and I'm like hell yeah, I love it. So is that what you're like though? And they're like, "Oh
Right.
no, like when I meet with clients I'm usually in like athletic wear cuz like if they're doing like an active job, like the power suit isn't the move." And I was like, "Okay, so anything that you're putting out on behalf of the business is setting a tone and an expectation of what working with you is going to look and feel like, whether it's a
Mhm.
visual or copy. So, when you are putting out your power suit and you're like, I'm going to fix you up, and then they meet you, and if you're like soft and sweet and like much more casual, there's nothing wrong with either of those approaches to working with people. But if somebody hires boss bitch who has no BS, and then they get soft and
Mhm.
sweet, they that's not what they were hiring for. So it's about being honest with yourself about yourself and your staff of what
Mhm.
does it really look and feel like to come into our space. And then we need to communicate that with everything out there on behalf of our business. So if you guys are a very like, listen, people like come in, they take their class, they leave. If you're trying to just come in and get a really good class and like not have to do a whole like uh like get to know you circle, like that is what some people are looking for. But if you're
Mhm.
like, no, no one's going to enter our studio without multiple people being like, oh my gosh, what's your name? Have you been to a class before? Oh, I'm so excited you're here. You want to make sure that when they come into your space for a PT session or a Pilates class, that they already have an understanding of what it's going to feel like and that it happens.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point to make because I find, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people, and I'm just going to speak for our industry, they think the marketing is like the putting out there and like paying for, and they don't understand that there's an entire strategy involved, which also is what is actually housed in home, right? Like in your space, just like you said, how are you presenting online? If your colors are very clean on your website and they come in and they're very bright or loud, like there's just a kind of a disconnect there. And I think that's where people miss the point of marketing is a strategy. So there should be like some foundational things that you work on. So if you're working with a business, let's just speak our industry, like boutique
Yeah,
fitness and
yeah.
wellness. So they have never done marketing before. Okay. They were like, oh, I listen to Christa Gurka's podcast. She's always talks about marketing. I need to market. They come to you. What are some of the things that you are telling them? Well, maybe telling them about marketing. So let's do this question first. what are you telling them if they want, I want to learn all about marketing. What are all the ways they can market their business? And I know there's a plethora of them. So if you don't want to go through all of them, but maybe five or six like of the main ways a business can market their services.
I kind of break it down into three types of marketing we need to be doing. Marketing to brand new people. So people who are looking for what you do, but either don't know you exist or maybe are in the research phase. So we have marketing towards new people. Then we have nurturing people who are aware of you and maybe they've tried classes near you or they've tried other professionals, but they have seen you before and now we're trying to get them to give us a chance. And then the last one is to what we were talking about already, to the people we already have coming into the studio, our
Okay.
current people, because there is still marketing that needs to be done to retain them and keep them in our sphere. So, for new people, it would be, where are people doing research on looking for somebody that does what you do or offers your services? And where would they be conducting that research? So, social media and search engines would be like two of the main places. So, if they look up Pilates on Instagram, if they find you, what are they going to see when they land there? And is it helpful, valuable, and reflective of your expertise and your brand experience if they were to come into your space? And then the same for if your search engine. So if they're searching for um, Pilates classes near me and you come up, when they go and land on your page, is the page ready to help them book into a Pilates
Mhm.
class? Is it very clear? So new marketing of making sure that when people find you, that the experience they encounter is reflective of your brand and what you want people to be seeing and understanding about you. The next piece, the nurture. So new would be social media, blog posts, YouTube, podcasts, anything that people can find without already knowing that you exist. So
Mhm.
things that they would be searching for specific topics, wanting to learn, or that people might send to them, right? Like your podcast is a perfect example that, like, if one of your listeners is like, oh my gosh, I was just talking about this with my friend who also runs a studio, she might share your podcast with somebody and that has now reached a new person that is just getting introduced into your ecosystem. So all of those are mainly geared towards new people and showing and telling them what we're about. Then the next one is nurture, and we take all of those platforms from the new and then we add in email. So the
Okay.
hope is that we have the opportunity from new people and an offer of some sort to get them of like, well, if you want a little bit more, if you share your email with us, then it can be a specific like a new student bonus or a digital offer, something to give you the chance to slide into their email inbox because for the most part, social media, our blogs, our YouTube, a lot of that relies on algorithms to get served to people
Mhm.
versus our email. We know when we send an email that it's going to land in their inbox. So,
Hopefully.
yes, yeah, if you aren't breaking any rules, if you're not falling into spam categories, which can also be it's a whole other topic. For,
Podcast.
for the most part, you can count on emails arriving. So that gives us the better chance to get into a little bit more detail and more regularly nurture people into the purchase or enrollment decision that we want them to make. Um, then the last piece about our current clients, that's where we have the opportunity to nurture with our in-person experience. So like, what is it like in
Mhm.
studio? What is it like in sessions? What kind of education, value, community are you providing when you're in person with them? Then we still have that email that we're sending class updates, studio news, maybe specific like student highlights. I think it looks different for every studio of what feels impactful for them to be emailing current students. And then we're still using all of our new marketing can still be used to nurture our current clients so that they can feel good about the community that they're a part of. So when they see fun posts from Pilates in the Grove, they're like, yeah, that's my studio. they're having fun with it. That's why I like going there. And it like
Right.
reaffirms that they've made a good decision in where they're spending their time and energy and that they're in community with people that feels right.
Yeah. Great, great explanation of that. So, okay, so that explained like, okay, here's all the places we can be, right? I'm a new business to you as a client. I have not really done any marketing before. My goal is to get, like you said, I need to fill my Pilates classes a little bit more. What are some things that you are suggesting be my first like my first task? Like what am I doing first basically? Yeah.
Um, I think one of the easiest wins for fitness business specifically are re-engagement campaigns with email.
Hmm.
So if you've been in, and that's obviously it's if you've been in business, but maybe we're trying to like uh rejuvenate our business a little bit. Um, Putting together an email campaign to people who either haven't attended classes in a few months or maybe were previously members but no longer have a membership. So people who have said yes to us before, and at some point that turned into like a maybe or a no, because they are already like a what we'd call like a warm lead. They're already
Yes.
warm to us. They already know we exist. They know about us. So that would be one of the first places I would want to start is like, let's go to people who already know us rather than trying to bring in totally cold, have never heard of us before people. So if the business has an email list and if they've been able to be tagging and tracking people, which most current class systems, like ones that allow online registering for classes and
Hmm.
signing up for them, they can help you filter that you're like, oh, they haven't taken a class in 2 months or they haven't renewed in 6 months, so that we can do targeted messaging for people in like different stages of how long have we not seen them for.
Right.
Um, that would be one of the like potentially quickest wins. The next question that I would ask them to figure out what we do next is what is our capacity for marketing creation?
Oh, that's a
Like
good one.
if so 99% of my clients are the CEO or business owner and they are also the marketing director.
And the technician and the doer and the janitor and the bookkeeper. Yes.
Yes.
So, yes.
So I have always been very passionate that like there is no formula that like I'm never going to get on a call with someone and be like, "Well, you have to start posting on Instagram every single day and you have to post an Instagram story, but then you have to wait till that story expires and then you need to post a series of stories." And then like there's I'm not about hacking or trying to like make it so uh consuming that you become a content
Hmm.
creator. So, figuring out what capacity do you have for making videos and writing copy. And then between those two, because that's mostly what your marketing is going to break down into, right? Copy in different lengths and forms in different
Hmm.
places, and then video in different lengths and forms in different places. So, I try to get a gauge on like, how much do those make you sweat? And how much anxiety does that bring up if I was like, hey, could you record videos every week? Um, and then based on that, we figure out of what of all the platforms available to us, what is going to have the least resistance to being able to create consistent content for them.
Yeah.
Consistency matters a lot in terms of nurturing people that follow you and training algorithms that you can be counted on for producing content that is of the moment and matters to people. So I would rather you do, one blog post a month and two Instagram posts every week for 3 months so we can really see if like we're getting traffic from those sources, what
Hmm.
topics get interaction. Then if you go like gung ho. And for like 3 weeks, you're posting a reel every single day, and then you're producing a YouTube video and a blog post, but then you burn out. And then in 6 months, we're in the same place that you're like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to be marketing. I did have a really good 10 days though in April. I did a bunch in April. Um, because it is not realistic to expect yourself to go from 0 to 60. If you're not doing very much now, I'm not going to expect you to become a professional marketer in the next 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
talk about capacity, talk about different content needs, and then what support you have. So you might say like, I don't want to record any videos. That doesn't feel good to me. And then we ask, well, is there anyone else on staff? Like, do you have team members that maybe this might not feel as heavy as a lift for them? And so trying to navigate what support you have and then how we can use it in a purposeful way to
Hmm.
put together a plan that you will build consistency so we can start to navigate where do we see results from? Where are we getting traction? And then one of my biggest indicators if what we're doing is working is if the leads that you're getting, whether it's 2 a week or 20, are they actually good leads?
Right.
Because if we're
Can you
getting
explain that to people? Because I do think that's like a misnomer for people. Like, you get these people that are like, oh, I can get you 100 leads. And getting the leads is the easy part. Getting good leads is a different. So can you explain that for our audience to understand the difference between leads and like qualified leads?
the so online business owner, there are like two sides of a coin. I this is the example I want to use of people putting their pricing on their website or not putting their pricing on their website. Tons of people feel passionately about both. That and then consumers often also feel passionate that they're like, if you don't have pricing, I'm not wasting my time because I don't want to guess and I don't want to have to get on a call or send an inquiry to find out that you're outside of my budget. Um, that to me is an example of how you could potentially get more leads, right? Potentially, if you're like, oh, well, I'm going to leave this off. And so I'm going to get the chance to sell them.
Mhm.
I'm going to convince them of this. But in my mind, those leads aren't as high quality because they might within 30 seconds be like, oh, I was never going to spend more than $200. I do think that there are what really talented salespeople, but I think that the majority of people make decisions with some sort of budget in mind, and
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing. It's not like a bad word. So when I'm talking about quality leads, I'm talking about that they're looking for the service that you offer in the style that you offer it at the price point that you sell it.
Oh,
So
so good.
we need
Say
like
it.
all
Can
of
you
those.
say it again? Say it again. That's like I'm gonna clip this for my audio clip. It's perfect.
Our most qualified leads are going to be looking for what you offer in the style that you offer it at the price point that you charge for it. And if they check 2 out of 3 of those boxes, you have a chance at still converting them, but you're probably going to have to put more energy into it. And you have the potential, this is my trauma talking, of them just being a red flag client.
Hmm.
Because there are people that will sometimes hire you ignoring that you didn't check one of those boxes for them. And then every step of the way, they're like, well, why don't you do it like this? I was really hoping you would do this. Well, could you maybe take a little bit off the price? And you're like, no, this is so even if you convert them, you might pay the price in executing with them as paid members. So we want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can in our outward facing marketing to communicate those 3 things so that when someone comes into our sphere, it's such an easier yes because they've already seen what we offer. They already have a really good understanding of what it looks and feels like. The style that we offer it, there are hundreds of Pilates instructors, And you could take classes from all of them and have a vastly different experience, even with them all being labeled beginning Pilates. Like you could take 100 beginning Pilates classes and still come out of it and being like, I only want to take classes with those three people again.
Hmm.
So communicating, showing it, then price point is just it is a factor for people in making purchase decisions.
For sure. I think we could all, if you ask 10 different practitioners, you'd probably get 10 different answers, at least for sure in our industry, about pricing. I have this conversation with people all the time. So, okay. That being said, how important is it for you to work with customers or your clients that they really know like their ideal buyer super, super well? Like, or that person that's like, no, everyone is good for Pilates in the Grove.
So everything you do for on behalf of your business is going to attract and repel. And it's going to be the most impactful if we're doing those on purpose. And
It's gonna
when
be
you
impactful
are
if you're doing them on purpose. Okay.
so if you are trying to attract everybody, while that feels the most like that feels strategic because you're like, well, everyone can take Pilates. And I think a lot of times it's coming from a genuine place of service that they're like, I
Sure.
don't want anyone to feel unwelcome or that they wouldn't be capable of taking Pilates because like Pilates can be I think it can often come from a very service-based place or a business place of like, well, I'll take anybody. I'll figure it out. Whoever they are, they can come in and I'll make the best of it. Um, but most people are looking for an environment that they're going to feel safe in and that they're going to be like in the right place. And that often means showing them and telling them in a more niche way. Cause like I don't really align with like this is great for all humans.
Yeah. Great.
That doesn't typically communicate to most people, even though they're like, well, I am most humans. And I
Yeah.
think it's knowing your, so to answer your question for real and not just ramble, you have to know your people and know what matters to them in regards to your service. So for Pilates students, does it matter if your classes are done by difficulty? Does it matter if it's an all female staff?
Right.
Does it matter if um, you apply elements of like consent with making adjustments like of your clients that come in and the type of service that they're looking for what what identities do they want to see, which ones matter to them?
Yeah. And I also think I agree that you like the same way you'd be like, well, every business owner needs marketing, right? Every business owner needs marketing. The same way I'm like, everybody could benefit from Pilates, but we are all of us, I don't care what business you are, we are truly going after like a certain person. Everybody could do Pilates, would benefit from Pilates. And at the same time, Pilates is a higher price point. So it may not be ideal for everybody. Right. And being able to say, well, I specifically help XYZ. I do believe that people will pay an expert for general advice, but they don't want to pay a generalist for expert advice. And so
uh
I say, like,
yes,
be the expert, you know?
it seems more limiting on the surface.
It does. People have a really hard time with it. They like really are like, no, but that means like the thought in their head is that means I'm leaving money on the table.
But how much money really? Like if you are saying that your studio is ideal for women in their 50s and 60s and you're like, "Oh no, women in their 40s won't come to me." Okay, well, how many women in their 40s are coming now? And how many of them that come now, if we want more of them, are really turned off by the idea of seeing older bodies in classes?
Mhm.
Like that's why I'm like understanding your audience of what are yeses and nos for them versus like, "Oh yeah, that's fine."
Mhm.
Is
And I
so
also
important.
think it could be a really good exercise too, because what we think and what's actually true are two different things, right? So maybe, Pilates is having a moment right now. So, like, it's all the rage. And so, if you want to be attracting 20 somethings, but you look at your metrics and if you have 3 to 5 years of data in your system and your system is saying the average age of your client is 57, well, guess what? You can want to attract 20 somethings all you want, but what's the message and the vibe that you're giving out is attracting these people. And why not go after like the proof? Like, these people are coming to you, you're selling what they want. So, like, lean into that a little bit more, I would think.
If you can separate your business from like your ego, you're
Mhm.
able to make business decisions easier. And I think that sometimes for small business owners, it's really hard for them. When I say ego, I'm also talking about like your heart of like
Oh,
what
yeah.
you want to be doing.
Hmm.
And you can still make heart-centric decisions, but I think you have to embrace that it will potentially cause harm to your business stability. And you have to decide if that is more important. Like, if you are passionate that you're like, more women in their 20s need to be taking Pilates, and this is my mission that I'm going to become the Pilates studio for women in their 20s, it probably means that you're going to ostracize the women in their 50s that have been coming to you. And you're also probably going to have to completely change your business because women in their 20s are working and going to school. So,
Right.
like, do you want to become a place that has to offer evening classes every day of the week? Or do you like your business as it's situated? And that is a true, like, how much do you want to run your business to grow and be a successful business? Or are you trying to run a business that just like feels good? And the
Hmm.
hope is those can both happen. But I think with business owners that sometimes feel really mission driven, that they can get lost on the way and miss out on a thriving business because they're not okay saying goodbye to the dream of being the Pilates place for 20s.
Yeah. And we can still be mission driven companies with certain things, right? So, like, we can be mission driven, and, Pilates in the Grove just did a huge fundraising efforts for some of the fire victims in California. And, like, that is part of our mission, right? There are certain things that become mission driven initiatives, and there's other things that become profit driven initiatives. And profit driven initiatives are so that we can have more impact, which feeds our mission, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this, like, circle all the way around. Okay, let's move into timeline, because I know as a high achiever that I want things done yesterday. And I also know that when I talk to people about marketing, they're like, well, I did this thing for 2 weeks and it didn't work. So
Yeah.
let's be realistic. Let's give the people a little insight, right? And the way that I equate it to my movement people are, if a person comes into you that's been having 10 years of back pain, you're not going to tell them that they're going to get better in 10 minutes, right? You are going to offer them a timeline of, like, this will happen at this mark, and then this mark, and then this mark, right? Because and also depending on how much foundational work they've had access to, there's different things. So, can you talk a little bit about timelines in terms of LOI? And then the next question I want to get to is how not all marketing results in cash based, like, services, that there's some intangible sometimes ROI, like branding and community, leverage and legitimacy and stuff like that. So first,
Yeah.
let's just talk about metrics, and you can give, like, this is what we're seeing now in digital marketing, this is what we're seeing in just organic marketing. I'll let you speak to both of those.
We want to see consistency over time. And for me, that time is at least 3 months. Like with
Okay.
any current marketing platforms. Like I really want to try for a while. Um, and I know that's hard for people, especially if marketing is an uncomfortable practice, if it doesn't feel like it flows really naturally. 3 months can feel like an eternity, but it's 1 quarter.
It's
And
90 days.
we often set business goals based on quarters or 90-day runs. And so that's what I want this to align with, is giving it that much time. Now, I think within those 90 days, there's still room for experimentation per platform, but like we want to be we want to be if we're getting into email marketing on behalf of our business and we're like this is going to be what we focus on in Q2 and we are sending a weekly email every week, I want to see 12 emails go out, but across those 12 emails, we're going to try some different things. We're going to try
Okay.
different calls to action. So like what is the action we want people to take when they read that email? Is it sharing a blog post? Is it directing them to sign up for a class? Is it sharing a different resource about their health or wellness? Is it promoting another event being put on by somebody else in our community? Is it just showcasing that, like, hey, we are a part of the Grove and look at this fun thing that's happening. So if you're coming to class on Saturday, you should plan extra time because there's this art festival happening outside where the studio is. Um, so like it's not necessarily 12 weeks of the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's exploring that platform or that format. So if it's Instagram, for example, and you want to be more consistent on it, we can try even just with Reels, which is the short form videos on Instagram. There are many ways to create and format a reel. And so if I was working with a client on trying to get more comfortable with that and trying to see if they can get results from it in 30 days, or excuse me, in 90 days, we would plan a mix of different types of reels.
Mm-hmm.
I would want some where they are talking to the camera. We'd want some where we use like a generic, we call it B-roll, but just like a generic footage from the studio with text over it. We might do some where they were all text like slides, like it's more like a carousel. And we would try different ways of using that one format. And then at the end of the 3 months, trying to figure out if it worked, trying to see from a production standpoint, how did it go for them and their team of like, which ones felt easier for you guys to accomplish, which ones felt like a chore, looking at the vanity metrics in terms of like engagement of like which ones got likes, which ones like comments, and then the deeper engagement of which ones led to clicks to the website and did any of
Mm-hmm.
those move on down our funnel to make a purchase or book a class. So I would like 3 months, and within those I want us to have fun. I feel that this is the hardest part of being a marketer for me, where I really want everyone to feel really positive that like they got their money's worth out of what they
Mm-hmm.
invested in it in terms of time, money, and energy. And it is hard because it is a little bit that it's always going to be a recipe.
Mm-hmm.
So like all the ingredients are important for it coming together. And sometimes it can be tricky to nail down of like, well, that second pinch of salt was really what made the recipe come together versus like, well, we also used, well, like that one salt or that one seasoning had kind of gone bad, but we still used it anyways. Like, did that make a difference in how the recipe ultimately came out?
Yeah, and I think from what I'm hearing too, I didn't hear anything that was necessarily, oh, let me see how many I sold off of this, right? So in the first 90 days, especially if you're working with someone that you've never worked with before, I would imagine that you're like, okay, I'm talking about you have to know like what is the audience going to open, right? So I would imagine that if you're talking about emails, you're like, okay, we're going to track open rate. We're going to track click-through rate. Click-through rate means like, what are they clicking on the things that you're asking them to click in the email, right? And
Or do
then,
they only click to your website because they just
correct.
want to be able to book a class, but your email reminded them that
to
they
book
need
a
to take
class.
class.
Right. So you're looking at these things, and then in the social media, the Instagram, you're looking at likes, saves, shares, and did they click to the website? Did they follow the funnel down underneath it, right? So there are metrics besides just direct sales that are wins. And I think people a lot of times only equate it to direct sales, right? It's like they only, oh, I did this email marketing for 90 days, but I didn't sell anything. But if you started with like a 10% open rate and you went to a 35% open rate, now you've got, of those, you know, 300 people that are opening your email, you've got 30 of them clicking. Like it's only a matter of time before now you're going to get to see the actual results. And that's what I kind of meant by, it's not always the dollar amount that is a win for people. And I think people just equate as like, I put $1,000 into this thing, I expect $3,000 back. But there has to be something for you to work with, right? So it might cost you $5,000 before you get it to the point that like $1,000 in gets you $2,000 out.
Well, and so especially like if we're talking about money with like running ads, you're often running ads to like a low cost or a free offer because we are aiming for conversions and getting people into our world, into our sphere. So even if that initial offer doesn't necessarily convert to sales, which is a reflection on the offer that you're like, okay, so people would say yes to this, but it doesn't automatically mean a yes to this bigger offer. Those people are now on your email list. So now we're
Right.
tracking of like, okay, so those people that joined our email list from that, do they stay engaged? Is it just a longer process of getting them to say yes? Or was it really not aligned that like they said yes to this and it really didn't feel connected to what our ultimate end offer goal was?
Right.
Um, so yes, like you want to look at engagement through every step where people can fall off
Mm-hmm.
and paying attention to are those metrics improving or degrading? And like, then how do we adjust the content that leads up to that step to keep it improving rather than losing people?
Right. And even if you're not paying for ads, like let's say I paid Lauren Peachie, my content strategist, to design a strategy for me, and then I maybe pay a monthly fee to help with my email copy and all of that. Like I think people are like, well, I pay, $1,000 a month to a content strategist with my social media and my emails, but I'm not seeing sales, right? Well, it's
Hmm.
all a process, right?
Yeah.
It's a process. It's a process of training our clients. So you have to give content that they're willing to engage in, which means not
Yes.
everything should be about sales, because if you sell,
Oh,
sell, 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 they just will tune you out, right? Your emails have to be something that they want, like, to read, right? So they have to have a reason to open them. And then throwing in, like you said, like maybe you're like, okay, our emails are just, they're stagnant, right? What can then the contents, like what can Lauren say to me? Okay, let's try to throw in some free opt-ins. Let's see, are people really just not clicking, or are they just not interested in what you have to have them click on?
yes.
Okay. And then you can test that, right? Like testing it. And then once you've got all of that stuff organically down, I feel, then you start testing paid ads. Because if stuff is not working organically, which means you're not paying for it, it's like organic happening, it's throwing money at it is only going to not work times money, right? So it's like it has to be working on an
If
organic
people
level.
who aren't already interested in you aren't interested, why are people who
But
have never heard of it and don't know you as an expert or a thought leader or a professional, what will make them more apt
interested.
to say yes?
Yeah. Exactly. It's just, I agree. It's just, but I don't think it's the business owner's fault per se. I think this is how marketers sometimes come across, and they're like, pay me X and I'll give you X
Yeah.
squared, right? And so if we as business owners don't know enough, we get bamboozled by that, right? We don't have enough knowledge to come to the person and say, these are my goals, right? And these are how we're going to track our efforts. So, okay, I want to do one last question, and I have to ask this question because it's like everywhere now. What are your feelings about AI?
I
And
knew it. I knew that was
I
going to
know,
be the last one.
I know, well, because I was like, listen, I love AI. Claude right now is my BFF. Claude and I have conversations all day about shit, but I also, I personally don't believe that AI can really, really well recreate who I am. And it's only as good as the information I feed it. Right.
Yes.
And so
And every fresh conversation is a fresh
is a
conversation.
fresh conversation, right? So, and I know there's a lot of people out there pushing AI, and I love AI. I mean, I will help me rewrite my HR emails and like, how do I say this in a way that doesn't sound condescending, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes, yes, yes.
yeah, so I love it for certain things, but I think some people are abdicating their
Mhm.
role as a marketer with AI. So, what are your thoughts on AI?
All the things that you just said you use it for are perfect. I also use Claude. So for there is Chat GPT was one of the biggest and like the first on the scene to use OpenAI in a chat form for people to be
Mhm.
able to converse and get feedback, get copy, get answers, kind of brainstorm things. I like using Claude and I even pay for it.
So do
And
I.
um, Claude, in their terms of service, they don't use what you give it to train it better. So, as a business owner, I worry less about me providing things to Claude that it could turn around and give somebody else. But this leads to where I do and don't like business owners using it. So, AI is an amalgamation of everything that it is pulled from the internet. The average does not necessarily mean the best. And if we are using AI for marketing, anything that it gives us, it could give to the 10 or 100 next people that ask it.
Mhm.
So, especially marketing practices that are geared towards SEO, you don't want to use AI because what is providing you, it could provide everybody else. And there is nothing unique to what you're going to be putting on your website. So, website copy and blog posts are not AI generative they don't use them to make those
Mhm.
because you don't want those things to be replicated by the studio down the street from you. It hurts both of your search engine optimization and also it looks weird if someone's researching Pilates and they're like, I've read like this paragraph before. Um, and you're because what you the way that you ask the AI is very similar to how
Similar.
somebody else asked it. However, like you talking about using it for HR emails or other forms of communication, if you are using it to improve something that you already have, or you're looking to understand how your tone is coming across, it can be really good for analyzing things like that. And I love it as a marketer as like a brainstorm partner for me. That like if I'm working on a client plan that I'll be like, I need to achieve X, Y, and Z, and I want to use A, B, and C. Can you give me 5 ideas related to this topic? Now, I will tell you 95% of the time, I don't use what it gives me. And that to me is not a failure of AI because I'm using it as a brainstorm partner. So
Yeah.
the whole
It gives you
purpose,
like an idea. It's like
yes,
you're not starting from a blank slate.
yes.
Yeah.
And then it's my job as a professional to, if it gives me a good idea, to be like, okay, now what is the most Pilates in the Grove way to execute on this idea? And
Mhm.
it typically isn't the out of the box AI idea, because while you can do prompting in a strategic way, it's still going to be more generic than what
Yeah.
you need it to be. And I mean, I've noticed as I've used it that it'll often make things very broad. And
Mhm.
right now with our content, with so much content existing, lots of times we need to get really specific. And that's oftentimes only something an expert can do. So how
Right.
can you take the ideas and how it's presented it to you and then be like, "Oh, but I know the micro version of this," and educate in that way. But it is a really powerful research tool, but you need to understand where it's getting its information from
Mhm.
and understand that it's still your responsibility to validate
For
and
sure.
to add your expertise to it, and pretty much never use it out of the box unless you're fine with other people having the exact same thing that you have.
Yes. And if you're using it for anything like a blog post and you're quoting something or giving facts, please, you must verify that source because sometimes it makes shit up. So, like, verify, don't use that just because it says it there. Go to the source.
Or
ChatGPT
Claude
will
makes
give
up
you the source.
so
Claude
many
makes up shit.
stats. And then you'll
Claude makes
ask,
up
"Where
stuff
did
all the
you
time.
get that?" And it's like, "Oh,
I
well,
don't
that
know.
was just an example."
Yeah. ChatGPT now will give you the source, but sometimes you go to the source and it's fake. So you really have to verify things on there. I do think like sometimes I'll record my coaching calls and my mentoring calls and then I will put them into AI and I'm like read this transcript, put it into common language, take out the blank spaces, things like that. It can do, I think
Oh,
really
yes.
well, but yeah, I don't think it can create a marketing strategy for like I mean like use a professional, right? A human
Yes.
being. And so I had to ask about the AI question though. So this has been super fascinating and we just went over time a little bit, but I don't want to take up more of your time. So will you please let everybody know where they can find you? And I think that's it. Like where can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
I mostly hang out on Instagram at Lauren Peachie. And then you can check out my website too if you want to see more about what I do, how I do it for people. I'm really passionate about making marketing as a business owner when it's just you really accessible and really fun and impactful. I don't think marketing needs to be overwhelming. And I think that the best way to approach it is to make it align with who you really are and how you like working with people. And then it flows much easier. So if you like
Totally
that,
agree.
and then if you like random celebrity gossip, book recommendations, Diet Coke, those are what I'm talking about just on the daily, getting my nails done, just really being a girly pop.
Fun, fun. Spell peachy for everybody so that they can get it right.
Oh yeah, my first name is Lauren, and then it's Peachy with an IE at the
Yeah.
end. So Peachie.
Yes. And we'll link all of that up in the show notes, but so that they can follow you. And Lauren, thank you so much. It's always fun to talk to you. You're just a pleasure and a delight and a joy. And I hope people reach out to you. So check her out, at least follow her on Instagram. She's very funny. And so you'll definitely at least be entertained. So thank you guys all for joining us. And until next time, my friends, bye for now.